The ad sells silence. A sleek battery unit sitting in a clean garage, no exhaust, no oil changes, no fuel cans, no noise complaints from the neighbors, and right across the screen in confident font, generator replacement. It is a compelling image, and millions of buyers have accepted it at face value. Then the grid goes down. Day one feels manageable. You run the essentials, the fridge kicks on, the lights stay up, and the battery reads healthy. Then the fridge cycles again overnight. A cloud bank rolls in and cuts your solar recharge. By mid-morning of day two, that comfortable percentage on the display is dropping faster than you expected, and the silence that felt like security now feels like a countdown. Here is the line that should appear in every product listing but never does. A power station replaces the noise and the fumes. It does not automatically replace the energy. What follows is a forensic audit of exactly where that gap lives, covering output wattage, stored watt-hours, surge current limits, recharge bottlenecks, and the specific conditions where a gas generator still wins without apology. So before any product claim deserves belief, you need a concrete standard for what replacement actually means. Not a feeling, not a marketing category, a measurable threshold. A true generator replacement must do 5 things simultaneously. It must supply enough continuous watts to run your critical loads at the same time, not one at a time. It must handle startup surge currents, because a refrigerator compressor or a well pump draws 2 to 3 times its running wattage the moment it kicks on. It must sustain that output for the full duration of the outage, not just the first comfortable hours. It must recharge fast enough to recover before the next demand cycle hits. And it must connect to your home safely, whether through a transfer switch, an interlock, or deliberate manual management. That is the 5-number audit you should demand from any product before purchase. Usable watt hours, continuous watt rating, surge watt capacity, and how long it can hold that surge, recharge input watts, and the connection method. Notice what is not on that list. Charging phones, running a router, keeping a lamp on. Those are backup conveniences. Useful, genuinely useful, but they are not the same load profile as a refrigerator cycling every 90 minutes, a sump pump responding to a storm, a heating system fighting January, or a household trying to cook on day 3. This distinction matters because it exposes the core mechanical reality. A gas generator creates electricity continuously as long as fuel exists. A power station only spends stored electricity. Unless it can recharge faster than it depletes, the outage eventually wins. That recharge rate is where the comparison gets uncomfortable fast. That recharge rate problem exists because of something more fundamental than spec sheets reveal. A power station is not a generator. It is a battery, an inverter, a charger, a battery management system, and an input controller, all packaged in one box. That is genuinely impressive engineering. But none of those components create electricity. They store it, convert it, and regulate it. The moment you start drawing power, the tank is draining. The math is straightforward and unforgiving. Take your battery's usable watt-hours, divide by your appliance's wattage, then subtract inverter and conversion losses, which typically run 10 to 15%. A 2 kilowatt-hour power station running a 400-watt refrigerator does not give you 5 hours of runtime. It gives you closer to 4, and that assumes no other load touches it. Now contrast that with gasoline. 1 liter of gasoline contains roughly 9.5 kilowatt-hours of chemical energy. That same 2 kilowatt-hour power station may weigh 30 or 40 kilograms before a single watt leaves the inverter. A gas generator carries energy density that no current battery chemistry can touch. And when the tank empties, you pour in more. There is no equivalent action on the battery side that happens in under a minute. This is the category error embedded in almost every replacement claim. A generator's runtime ceiling is set by fuel supply and maintenance intervals. A power station's runtime ceiling is set by a fixed number stamped on the unit before you ever buy it. One scales with your need. The other simply runs out. But here is where honesty requires a pause. That fixed capacity problem is real, and it matters enormously in extended outages. What it does not do is erase the genuine advantages a power station delivers in the scenarios it was actually designed for. Short outages are where these devices look like miracles. Because in a short outage they are. The power goes out at 11 at night. You keep the lights on, charge your phone, run your laptop, maintain your internet router, and power a CPAP machine through the whole night without leaving your bedroom. No noise, no fumes, no trip outside in the dark with a fuel can. You press one button, and the house feels almost normal. For that use case, the experience is not exaggerated in the marketing. It is accurate. The indoor safety advantage alone is worth understanding clearly. A gas generator running in a garage or near an open window has killed people. Carbon monoxide is odorless, fast-acting, and entirely absent from a battery-powered inverter running on stored charge. A power station operates in your living room without any ventilation requirement. That is not a minor convenience feature. It is a meaningful safety gap between the two technologies. Add cleaner power output for sensitive electronics, zero engine noise at 2 in the morning, and no fuel storage in your garage, and the short outage case becomes genuinely compelling. The trap is not the product. The trap is the extrapolation. Day 1 comfort is real, and it trains buyers to assume Day 2 survival is equally covered. That is the assumption worth examining carefully. Day 2 is where the math stops working in your favor. Walk through what actually happens. The refrigerator compressor cycles on every 15 to 20 minutes, pulling somewhere between 150 and 400 watts each time it runs. The freezer does the same. Lights, phone chargers, and a router run continuously in the background. Add a small fan or a CPAP machine overnight, and a 2,000 watt-hour power station that felt enormous on Day 1 is genuinely threatened by mid-morning on Day 2. Not because the device failed, because the loads were real and the capacity was finite. Once it depletes, everything depends on how you refill it. If the grid is still down and clouds moved in overnight, solar recovery on a typical 200-watt panel setup takes 8 to 12 hours to restore meaningful charge, assuming full sun. If you have no panels, you are waiting for utility power to return, which is exactly the situation you are trying to avoid. The only other option is connecting a gas generator to recharge the power station, which is not a replacement scenario. That is a gas generator doing the actual work, with a battery acting as the intermediary. This is the comparison that matters. A gas generator with 5 gallons of stored fuel continues producing power for 8 to 12 hours and refuels in under 2 minutes. The recharge gap between those technologies is not marginal during a sustained outage. Before you buy, run the calculation. List every critical load, assign it a realistic duty cycle in hours per day, multiply wattage by hours to get watt hours, and total them. If that number exceeds your power station's usable capacity, which is typically 80% of rated capacity, you have not bought a generator replacement. You have bought Day 1. Now here is where the wattage number printed on the box becomes genuinely dangerous. You saw 1800 watts. You looked at your refrigerator label, saw 150 watts running draw, and assumed you had enormous headroom. What you did not see was the startup surge. Motors and compressors do not start at their running wattage. A refrigerator compressor that draws 150 watts while running can demand 600 to 900 watts for the first 2 to 3 seconds of startup. A sump pump rated at 800 running watts can surge to 1500 or higher at the moment it kicks on. That surge is brief, but the inverter and battery management system inside a power station have to absorb it instantly, or the unit shuts down to protect itself. That shutdown is not a glitch. It is the device working exactly as designed, and your sump pump is still off. Load categories behave very differently in a real outage. Electronics, phones, laptops and routers draw stable, modest power with no surge. They are easy. Refrigerators are intermittent and surge-sensitive. Microwaves run for short bursts but pull 900 to 1200 watts the entire time they operate. Sump pumps are critical loads with heavy surges at unpredictable intervals. Electric space heaters and window air conditioners are simply brutal, running at sustained high wattage continuously with no relief. The BMS inside your power station also enforces temperature limits, overload duration limits, and low battery cutoffs that can each interrupt a load independently. A unit rated at 1800 watts might sustain that output for only a few seconds before thermal protection reduces it. The fix is straightforward. Before assuming compatibility, find the appliance's running watts and its startup surge from a wattmeter or manufacturer data sheet. Check both numbers against your power station's continuous output rating and its surge rating, which are often listed separately and often very different. A single wattage number on a box tells you almost nothing useful. The wattage problem does not stop at surge ratings. It follows you into the next assumption most buyers make the moment they see a solar input port: that panels will keep the station charged through a multi-day outage. You saw 400 watts of panel rating and assumed 400 watts of charging. That number is a nameplate figure measured under laboratory conditions at a precise angle, at sea level, at a specific temperature, with no obstructions. Outside, during an actual outage, that number deteriorates immediately. Morning and evening sun angles slash output dramatically. Partial cloud cover can cut it by half. A single tree shadow crossing one cell in a series-wired panel can collapse output from the entire string. High heat, which is common in summer outages, reduces panel efficiency further. Then you lose additional wattage to cable resistance and connector quality. Real-world delivery in favorable conditions often lands at 50 to 70% of nameplate, and that is on a good day. Then the power station itself imposes a second ceiling. Every unit has a maximum solar input wattage, a voltage window, and a current limit, all enforced by its MPPT charge controller. If your panels exceed the voltage ceiling or push current above the controller's limit, the station clips the input or refuses to charge at all. More panel wattage does not automatically mean more charging. It means more panel wattage that the unit may simply ignore. Run the recovery math honestly. A 2 kilowatt-hour station receiving a real-world 200 watts of usable solar input needs 10 full hours of that output to recover completely. Compress the effective charging window to 6 good hours. Add intermittent clouds, and you are recovering less than half capacity per day. In a multi-day winter outage with low sun angles, partial recovery becomes the ceiling, not the exception. Before pairing panels to any station, check the maximum solar input wattage, the voltage range, and the current limit in the specification sheet. Then calculate realistic daily yield for your location and season, not the panel label. That solar recovery math exposes a ceiling on daily capacity. But there is a bigger ceiling most buyers never measure at all, and it is the one they bump into hardest. The idea that a portable power station can back up an entire home. Running a laptop and a lamp from an extension cord during an outage is not home backup. It is selective survival. Whole home backup means the furnace blower comes on, the well pump delivers water, the sump pump keeps the basement dry, the refrigerator holds temperature, and the kitchen loads stay available. Those are not the same category of demand. They are higher wattage, harder to surge, and running simultaneously in ways that compound fast. Backing up those systems legally and safely requires a transfer switch or interlock kit that disconnects your home from the utility grid before any backup source connects to the panel. Without it, you are creating a backfeed hazard for utility workers. That is not a technicality. It is the reason jurisdictions require permitted transfer equipment, and a portable station plugged into a wall outlet through an extension cord does not satisfy that requirement under any circumstance. Marketing language blurs this deliberately. Expandable battery capacity and large inverter numbers sound like whole home readiness. They are not, unless the system has been sized against your home's actual peak load, your critical circuit list, your daily kilowatt-hour consumption, and your ability to recharge the system before the next night's draw depletes it again. Start with your critical circuits. Then verify legal transfer method. Measure peak load, calculate daily kilowatt-hour demand, and confirm the system can recover in the available window. If any one of those steps fails, the marketing number is irrelevant. Now none of that means power stations are the wrong tool. It means they are being sold as the wrong tool. Used correctly, they are genuinely excellent. The strongest case is indoor emergency power where gas is simply not an option. An apartment dweller cannot run a generator on a balcony without carbon monoxide risk. A power station charges from a wall outlet before the storm, runs silently in the living room, and keeps a CPAP machine, phone, laptop, and a lamp going through the night without fumes, without noise ordinance violations, and without a single trip outdoors in bad weather. That is a real, meaningful win. Battery stations also protect sensitive electronics in a way gas generators often do not. Portable generators produce voltage fluctuations that can damage unprotected equipment. A good inverter-based power station outputs clean, stable sine wave power, which matters when you are running medical devices or recording equipment. For camping, overlanding, van builds, or any vehicle-adjacent use, the format is nearly ideal. The load list is small, the runtime target is predictable, and solar recharge is genuinely sufficient for those modest demands. The decision rule is straightforward. Buy a power station when your mission is silence, indoor use, electronics protection, or a defined short-duration load you can ration deliberately. The key phrase is deliberate rationing. When you know exactly what you are powering and for how long, the capacity limits stop being a trap and start being a workable constraint. The lie was never that power stations are useless. The lie was that they are interchangeable with a generator. They are not, and now you have the filter to tell them apart. So where does that leave gas? Exactly where it started, as the only practical answer when the job runs long, runs heavy, or cannot be rationed. If you are running a sump pump, a well pump, a window air conditioner, or electric heat for 2 days straight during a winter outage, you are not dealing with a defined short-duration load. You are dealing with continuous energy production measured in dozens of kilowatt-hours. A gas generator refueled every 8 to 12 hours delivers that. A power station, regardless of what the marketing says, cannot match that output at any reasonable price or weight. The energy density comparison is blunt. A 5-gallon fuel can store roughly the equivalent of 60 to 80 kilowatt-hours of potential energy. A power station with 2 kilowatt-hours of usable capacity costs several $100s and weighs around 40 pounds. Scaling battery storage to match even 1 day of serious load requires stacking units, multiplying costs, and still accepting slower recharge windows. Stored fuel wins on scalability every time resupply is available. Gas also wins on surge handling. Motor-driven appliances like refrigerator compressors and pumps draw 3 to 5 times their running wattage at startup. A correctly sized gas generator absorbs that spike without shutting down. Many power stations trip or throttle under identical conditions. Cold weather compounds the problem. Battery capacity drops measurably below freezing, which is precisely when heating loads are highest and outages are longest. None of this is brand loyalty. It is physics and planning math. Gas is noisy, outdoor only, and demands fuel discipline and maintenance. Those are real costs. But when the load list is long, the days are cold, and the outage has no end time in sight, those trade-offs are worth making. Believing otherwise is where the replacement lie does its damage. So the honest answer is not gas or battery. It is gas and battery, deployed correctly. Here is how that works in practice. The gas generator runs outdoors in bursts to produce bulk energy. The power station sits inside, charges from that generator, and then quietly delivers power to critical loads once the engine shuts off. Overnight, when noise matters and carbon monoxide risk rises, the battery carries the indoor loads. The generator only runs again when the battery needs a refill. That structure cuts generator runtime significantly, reduces fuel consumption, and eliminates the trade-offs that make either device miserable to rely on alone. This is also better than solar-only recharge during extended bad weather. When 3 overcast days drain the battery and no sun is forecast, a 30-minute generator run recovers hours of indoor capacity. Solar cannot match that recovery speed under those conditions. The replacement question dissolves when you frame it correctly. The generator is the energy source. The power station is the delivery and storage layer. Neither replaces the other because they are not doing the same job. Which brings you to the only design rule that matters before the buying decision. Identify your critical loads. Calculate their runtime requirement. Map your recharge path for every weather condition. Then confirm that the transfer between sources is safe and testable. If any of those 4 answers is vague, the system is not finished. A product that checks all 4 boxes might not exist as a single device. And that is exactly the point. Resilience is a system, not a product category. So let's close this with a usable filter, not a summary. Power stations are not a scam. They are a missold product. The lie is not in the device itself, but in the marketing claim that skips the proof. No load calculation, no runtime evidence, no recharge rate disclosed, no transfer method explained. Those 4 gaps are where buyers lose money. Before you spend anything, run this in order. Calculate the watt-hours your critical loads actually consume per day. Verify the unit's surge capacity against your largest motor start. Confirm how fast it recharges from every source available to you, including grid, solar, and generator. Then confirm how it connects to your home safely and legally. If any answer is vague, the product is unfinished for your situation. The distinction worth keeping is this. A power station replaces the noise and fumes. It does not automatically replace the energy. That single line should sit between you and every product page that calls itself a generator replacement without showing the math. Now, before you buy anything, pull up your own critical load list. Write down what you are actually trying to keep running and for how long. Drop it in the comments below, because the gap between what people assume they need and what they have calculated is exactly where these purchases go wrong. If this breakdown helped you think more clearly about that decision, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next.